Resilience emerges as we become better at managing the discomfort that comes with not knowing. And practice makes perfect here. The only way to do this effectively is to welcome uncertainty on a regular basis.
Our next guest, Ben, is coming from far away as well. I'm tired. He has a slide for that, so no problem if you're wondering. He's going to talk to us about complexity and legacy code. Something that we all like. So give it up for Ben.
Welcome to those of you that are still here. Thanks for being here. Are we awake? Okay. Can we get the dancers back out here? Is that possible? I wouldn't do that to you. So Adrian actually asked me to cut my slides in half after the hour-and-a-half opening keynote this morning so we can make up some time. That's not true, actually. However, my talk is about half as long, so you're welcome. All right, we're talking about embracing uncertainty, thriving in complexity and legacy code. This is probably not just a soft talk, but perhaps the softest talk of the conference so far. But we're not done yet. More to come. I don't know. We'll see. I really enjoyed James's talk about working at Stripe, what it's like to work in an environment like that. I can't help but imagine that perhaps some of you were thinking about what it would be like to work in an environment like that. And maybe you felt just a little bit of uncertainty. You felt a little bit of anxiety when you think about what would it be like to drop into that code base and try to get something done. Or maybe you just think back to your current position and think about the uncertainty that you felt as you were joining a new team, and there's just a lot that you didn't know, right? So this is the story of how I learned to think differently about uncertainty over the arc of my career. It's what I wish somebody had told me, not only when I was a new engineer, but even one with some experience. The primary takeaway is how to think and feel when faced with uncertainty, not just what to do. With that said, I'll leave you with some helpful tips or strategies that I found that helped me when I'm encountering these situations. Let's see, everyone experiences uncertainty, and what you do with that uncertainty matters. For those of you who have been in this industry for quite some time, I hope that my story parallels your own and encourages you to invite others to welcome uncertainty as well. And for those of you that are newer to the industry, I want to inspire you to see that uncertainty is something that we all face, every developer, including this one. In fact, I'm facing it right now. Uncertainty will never go away, but what you do with it matters. If we haven't met before, my name is Ben. You can find me as Benjamin Wood on Twitter. Do we still call it that? X? Yeah, Twitter, okay. And generally around the web as Benjamin Wood with a few exceptions. I live in Vancouver, Washington, not to be confused with the other Vancouver, BC, that Kyle was talking about earlier. Okay, let's be honest, my Vancouver is actually the other Vancouver, nobody's heard of it. We're kind of a suburb of Portland, Oregon. There's basically Oregon, Washington, Columbia River right in between, and we're just like right over the border. However, if you squint, you can actually see Vancouver up there in the very top left-hand corner. That's Vancouver, BC. It just happened to be there. I have a family. I hope you guys don't mind. I share a family slide. This is my wife, Malin. Yeah. Thank you. We've been married 17 years. I've got 2 kids. This is my daughter, Genevieve. She's 12. My boy, August. And this is Butter, and he's a good boy. Yeah. Professionally, I'm a principal software engineer at ClickFunnels. Yeah. But I wasn't always a principal software engineer. In fact, I started in this industry as a consultant, and I had no formal computer science education. I mostly taught myself to code. And when I landed my first consulting gig, I didn't know how to handle the effects of uncertainty. In fact, I didn't know what they were. You see, uncertainty can have a negative effect on cognitive functions. And I'd like to share some of them that I've observed in my own life, at least, with you now. Let's see what resonates with you. As software developers, we make hundreds of micro decisions every day. And even under the best circumstances, this can be exhausting. Sometimes I get to the end of the day, and my wife says, "Where should we take the kids for dinner?" And I say, "Nothing," because I just blankly stare, and I couldn't possibly make one more decision. Trust me, that's a frustrating situation for both of us. This is decision fatigue, and its effects are made worse by uncertainty, because cognitive load increases when the brain has to consider multiple possible outcomes. Or put differently, uncertainty forces the brain to work harder to process incomplete information. Uncertainty can impair working memory, which is the ability to hold and manipulate information in the mind. And this can be catastrophic when working in a complex system where you have to hold so much context in order to remain productive. When you're lost in complexity, recalling even the simplest details can feel like an impossibility. Uncertainty causes hypervigilance, where the brain becomes excessively focused on detecting threats or new information. And this leads to distractibility, where attention becomes fragmented and pulled towards any source of information, even irrelevant ones. I find that this commonly happens when I'm debugging. You go down a rabbit trail knowing that it's not going to lead you to the correct or to the solution that you're looking for, and yet you do it anyways. You just keep going. Has anybody been there? Yeah. We do this because the path appears easier at the time, and it's subconscious typically. It's more difficult to stay on task and focus on the problem when the path is unclear. Uncertainty triggers the brain's fear and stress responses. As humans, we're afraid of the unknown, and this is a natural reaction to uncertainty. When your life is in danger, these are appropriate feelings. The problem is that your brain doesn't often differentiate the circumstances, and the feelings associated with uncertainty are not always helpful, and it takes practice to overcome them. Faced with uncertainty, we are more likely to rely on mental shortcuts. For example, confirmation bias. This is where we seek out information that confirms our pre-existing beliefs, regardless of how true or relevant those beliefs are, even if we're wrong. Or the availability heuristic, where recent or vivid examples disproportionately affect our decisions. The book Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman explores how our brains make decisions. The book describes two systems. System one is the intuitive gut reaction way of making decisions, while system two is the more analytical, critical thinking way of making decisions. System one is often the reason that we jump to conclusions. And often these choices are made based on our feelings or instincts rather than logic, which would serve us better. Here's a quote from the book. Systems 1 and 2 are both active whenever we are awake. System 1 runs automatically, and System 2 is normally in comfortable, low-effort mode, in which only a fraction of its capacity is engaged. When you're overwhelmed with uncertainty, you're more likely to take mental shortcuts, again, because it's easier. System 2 does not want to engage. At various times in my career, I've been overwhelmed by uncertainty, and it's cyclical. The effects of uncertainty make it difficult to think, which causes me to feel even more uncertain and more overwhelmed. Has anybody experienced imposter syndrome ever in your career? Hey, look at that. It's like everybody. Cool. But I kept putting myself in situations that forced me to wade through uncertainty. Why is this here? About 10 years ago, I co-founded UpgradeRails.com, and this is a time when, it seemed at least, consulting companies didn't have like a productized consulting service for upgrading Rails, and I got the domain to prove it, that, you know, right, first one. But yeah, so nobody did it back then. Seems like everybody does it now. Dropping into a legacy Rails code base with the expectation that you'll be immediately productive is a great way to test your tolerance for uncertainty. In the early days of Upgrade Rails, we had a particularly challenging project. We were working with a subsidiary of a Fortune 100 company. They had a system that consisted of 7 Rails apps that we were upgrading from Rails 2 to Rails 3. If anybody's ever done an upgrade from Rails 2 to 3, I see a few hands. You're already probably feeling a little uncertainty. But these apps were coupled together in interesting ways. For one, they shared a database. All 7 Rails apps had one database that they talked to. But to make matters more interesting, each application had a discrete read-through, write-through caching mechanism using the aptly named gem Cache Money, possibly the best named gem ever. That was written by Nick Callan. So maybe you can see where this is going. Because of the shared database, but the discrete caches, they needed to devise a way to invalidate the caches when certain data changed in the database. So one app makes an update, changes some data in the database, but what about all of the read-through caching that the rest of the apps are doing? Like, it all has to be invalidated, right? So how did they solve that? Maybe you can think about how you would solve that. It's probably not the way they solved it, which was to write database triggers that directly, or perhaps indirectly, but nearly directly, interacted with the cache stores themselves to actually delete the keys. So they didn't call out to the Rails apps in some way to say delete the keys. They actually baked knowledge into the database, into these triggers, about how these cache key structures worked. So essentially their database was filled with knowledge of cache money. This coupling made upgrading these apps incredibly difficult, as you can imagine. And there was no path forward for the cache money gem. It's not like we could just upgrade it. You may know the name Nick Callan from another project, as he was the original author of Active Relation. And when Active Relation was introduced in Rails 3, it changed so much of Active Record that cache money was basically just made obsolete. Like, it was not going to be updated any further. And we had taken some gems while we were working on Rails upgrades as part of the service, and like brought support forward for them, like made them compatible. But looking at the source code of cache money, it was like, this is not a great idea, and I can see why. I can see why it was dropped. So this project was full of architectural plot twists like this, and I found myself completely and utterly overwhelmed with uncertainty. Fortunately, I was working with an older, wiser engineer at the time, and I noticed something, and it was that he was not fazed at all by the complexity that we were unwinding. And it was in that moment, let's be honest, it's probably over the course of a few months as we were working on this, but I realized he's got something that I don't have, because I seem to feel differently about this than he does. It's not that he has experience with this code base. We dropped into it at the same time. It's not that he had seen all of this before, though he'd probably seen more things than I had at the time. But it was that he was not afraid of the uncertainty. In fact, he embraced it and saw it as an opportunity for growth. I'm going to let you in on a little secret, and that is that I still feel uncertain every day. If uncertainty is a guarantee, and if it's here to stay, what can we do with it? Well, creativity thrives in environments where the usual rules don't apply. Think about it. It doesn't take creativity to solve a well-known problem. It's in moments of uncertainty that we have the opportunity to implement a novel solution. Maggie Jackson, author of Uncertain, The Wisdom and Wonder of Being Unsure, wrote this: I like to think of uncertainty as wisdom in motion and not the paralysis that we think it is. This idea of wisdom in motion suggests that uncertainty pushes us forward, forcing us to engage more deeply and to think critically. Rather than leading to paralysis, uncertainty can be a catalyst for growth. Resilience emerges as we become better at managing the discomfort that comes with not knowing. And practice makes perfect here. The only way to do this effectively is to welcome uncertainty on a regular basis. Challenges are opportunities. Instead of seeing uncertainty as a threat, those with a growth mindset see it as an opportunity. Rosa would not have been able to share what she learned about character encoding if she didn't practice this. Nabila would not have been able to share how she optimized that SQL query if she did not practice this. Yet, I've encountered so many developers that when they encounter something they don't understand, instead of digging in, they just try to work around it. And this leads to a poor understanding of fundamentals that can ruin a career. Carl Dweck, author of Mindset, says, "Real self-confidence is not reflected in a title, an expensive suit, a fancy car, or a series of acquisitions. It's reflected in your mindset, your readiness to grow." Reduce reliance on cognitive shortcuts. When we embrace uncertainty, we're in the frame of mind to make a conscious decision to think critically, to avoid these mental shortcuts that we're talking about, to not jump to conclusions. Uncertainty has the potential to enhance mental agility, creativity, and emotional resilience over time. The key to unlocking these positive outcomes is a change in your mindset. So I invite you to learn to identify feelings of uncertainty, to acknowledge the feelings, and then get excited that you're about to learn something new. Identifying the feelings is half the battle, and acknowledging the feelings makes a profound difference in our ability to turn uncertainty into something powerful. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Growth happens at the edge of our comfort zone. And if you're not uncomfortable, you're probably not optimizing, you're learning. Before we finish, I promised some practical tips. What does this mean? So, again, I invite you to think about, dropping into the team at Stripe, or think back to when you joined the team that you're on. You're building a mental model. And your mental model can be approximately accurate and improve over time. Getting hung up on having a perfectly accurate mental model is a great way to cause yourself undue anxiety. Embracing uncertainty means that you've made peace with what you don't know. Hypothesize and test. Make educated guesses about how the system works. These guesses are sufficient until they're not. At some point, you need to validate your understanding and test, but don't do this too early. As Tom mentioned, hopefully, you're as dumb as you'll ever be, so test the theories later. Compartmentalize complexity and understand how the big pieces fit together. The idea here is to zoom out. As you learn more about the individual components, put them in a box. The implementation details are not as important as the architecture, at least not initially. Pattern match and accept less than 100% confidence in your understanding. Admittedly, pattern matching is a skill that gets easier as you learn more patterns to match against. But as you grow in experience, pattern matching is a great way to hypothesize and compartmentalize. At some point, you'll need to increase your confidence. But do that again at the last possible second. It's like a lazy loading optimization for your mental model. This does come with a warning. You've got to be careful to identify confirmation bias. When pattern matching, it's easy to get stuck with an incorrect understanding that is difficult to overcome. So I'd encourage you to always be suspicious that what you believe might be wrong. It's also a great way to remain humble. Just build something. At a certain point, you have little to gain by reading code or looking at the database schema, and digging in and working on something, anything, is the next right step. This is where you begin to solidify your understanding of the implementation details, but only in the areas that are relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. Be honest. You don't have to fake it until you make it. Be honest with yourself and others about what you don't know. You will gain the respect of your peers by your ability to remain calm, cool, and collected in the face of uncertainty. Phone a friend. This implies that you have friends. When I joined ClickFunnels earlier this year, I spent the first week having one-on-ones and continued having one-on-ones in the following weeks until I met everybody that was relevant to my position. This is really, really valuable. It can't always be your first solution to ask somebody when you run into a problem. But once you've exhausted some of those other avenues, you shouldn't hesitate to ask. And it takes building relationships and knowing who knows what in your team in order to do that. History is important. Legacy code bases aren't static, and in many cases, understanding how something came to be is the key to understanding what is. So use Git. Find the historian. I found that most companies have one, somebody that's been there a long time. Interview them. Yeah. Understand the business, the product, and the customers. Intent is often missing in complex legacy code, and having a better understanding of the business as a whole helps to clarify intent. I'll share one more quote before we finish. In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Albert Einstein. So don't back down when you're unsure. Lean in to uncertainty. I'll leave you with this. Everyone experiences uncertainty, and what you do with that uncertainty matters. I would like to thank my employer, ClickFunnels, for providing me the opportunity to be here. We have a great team, especially Celso. We're building great software. We use Rails. When we're hiring, I'd encourage you to apply. I'd also like to thank our organizers, of course, for putting together this great conference, and to you for being here and making this possible. Thank you.